Okay. So, think. We're going to talk about Buddha's views of the world, Buddha's observations about how things exist. So that we can learn, if we choose to, so we can learn to make this our view, so we can become a Buddha too. And why? Because then there'll be no separation between self and other, and we'll have the perfect wisdom to help every sentient being exactly as they need for as long as time exists. And why this is because Buddha says this is our natural potential. So for this reason we sit here today, listening, thinking, analysing, meditating. Okay.
Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Esta tierra ungida con perfume y regada de flores, con el monte Meru, los 4 continentes, el sol y la luna, vista como una tierra pura de Budas, yo te ofrezco, que todos los seres puedan gozar de una tierra así. Oh sagrado y venerable Lama, desde las nubes de compasión que se forman en los cielos de tu sabiduría dharmakāyika, por favor, derrama una lluvia de Dharma vasto y profundo, de acuerdo precisamente con las necesidades de los que serán adiestrados. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kaniyatayami.
So as we've been discussing, Buddha's saying that everything, the way things exist is that they don't have an inherent nature. So those words for us, this is what we have to learn to understand. And he says is this too loud? Seems very loud. Shouting, I'm shouting. I think I'm shouting. Can we turn me down low? No? Who's the machine man? Okay. So, yeah, you see. And then I get excited and it's going to be impossible because I shout very loud. So, what Buddha's saying is that's how things exist. But the trouble is we haven't got a clue. We don't know. We don't realize this. We can't see it. We're totally blind, We have no idea. And this fundamental ignorance is why we suffer. This fundamental ignorance of how things actually exist is why we suffer. So this seems very abstract to us. Who would have thought that you see things wrongly is why you suffer? It's very surprising to us. It doesn't seem like how it is for us, So then we think, well, there's how do things exist? Well, there's 2 ways of talking about it. 2 ways of talking. How things exist conventionally and how things exist ultimately. So the emptiness is the shorthand for saying how things are ultimately. Or it's the ultimate nature, these words. But the way to talk conventionally is what we need to think about. What we need to do is think about certain things which bring the conclusion, therefore, things are empty. So it's almost like you could say, if we think of the two truths, conventional and ultimate, the ultimate is the conclusion we have to come to. It is empty of existing inherently. That's like the conclusion. That's the answer. That's the result. So how do you get it? How do you get to see that? What are the methods to get to see that? Well, the king of logic, the king of methods, as Lama Yeshe puts it, is to think about dependent arising, to think about how things exist in dependence upon various factors. This is the way to put it. That's what we have to think about. What's that noise? I'm such a sensitive girl. You know, I can't stand bad noises. It seems like static, yeah. Anyway. What is it? Anyway, I'll keep going. It's good. Oh, it's getting louder. Oh. Oh. There we go. Okie doke. Okay, so have you got this statement I just made? Are we okay? Are we okay? Oh, it's over here. He's making the noise. Oh, he's trying to listen to the Spanish. Oh, we have to give him another machine then. Give him another machine. Somebody lend him one. No? He needs the Spanish. Well, sweetheart, you're going to have to put up with my English, are you? You don't have a problem. Oh. Oh, sweetheart, what can we do? How are you going to manage? Will you manage with... You're okay? Okay, good. All right. Okay. All right. So did you get that statement I made? Just now, the essence of it. Huh? Or were we too distracted? I'll repeat it. This is the entire point of everything. The Buddha's saying that things exist in a certain way and that we are ignorant of it. We don't realize it. This is what he means by this ignorance, which I'll explain a bit more. So we have to sort out, we have to fix that ignorance. We have to remove it from our mind. He says we don't understand how things exist. So there are two ways he puts how things exist. There's a way of describing how things exist conventionally. All the individual phenomena of this universe. And that's the categories in the Heart Sutra. Those different categories are covering all the things in the universe. And all Buddha's saying is everything has these two ways of existing. The conventional way, which has got its own particular characteristics, and then ultimately how it is empty of existing inherently. So emptiness and dependent arising. These are the two words, the shorthand that they use for the ultimate and the conventional way that things exist. Okay, so one way to say it is like it's as if emptiness, the ultimate, is the conclusion we are trying to get to. That's the thing we're trying to see. That's the thing we're trying to get. That's the thing we're trying to understand. So how we understand it, the method we use to understand it, is to think about how things exist conventionally. The shorthand for that is dependent arising. The king of logics, Lama Yeshe puts it, to prove emptiness. So in this sense, emptiness is the conclusion to come to. It's the conclusion you come to. The method you use to come to that conclusion is to think about dependent arising. That's the sentence I'm trying to get you to hear. things exist in both these ways. One is the flip side of the other. But the stuff we've got to use in our brain, the words we have to use to think through logically, are the words relating to dependent arising. This is the way things exist conventionally. So, there's different ways of presenting dependent arising, interdependence, how things exist in dependence upon this and that. And so the three are, the first one, as I mentioned, this is the best one, one of the tastiest ones to think about in relation to the object called I. Self, person, being, I. They're all referring to, in our case, a sentient being, a mind possessor, the Tibetan word, a mind possessor. And we are one of them. We're in the human category. There's animals, there's spirits, hell beings, gods, all kinds of sentient beings. So that's a category of types of phenomena. We are one of the categories, if you like. They don't talk like that in the Heart Sutra, except the 5 aggregates is a way of breaking up persons into 5, heaps. There are cups, there are tables. We can see the universe is full of countless different phenomena. So a really tasty way to think about dependent arising, to think about how I come into being and exist in dependence upon many, 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 many countless causes. So the way the Lamas say it, the way the Buddhist view says it, is causes and conditions. So the seed, if you like, is a main cause for the flower. The water, the soil are the conditions. That's how they talk, So the causes, the main causes, and then the conditions that all have to come together to produce a flower. So there are so many causes and conditions that have to come together to produce me, and indeed my experiences. So this is really clear how Buddha's saying that we're not in touch with reality. We're totally ignorant. We're really living in ignorance. And this is why we suffer. And of course, we're totally ignorant of the actual causes and conditions that produce me. Therefore, we will never see the emptiness of me, which is when we've liberated ourselves from suffering. So the thing we must do is think about those, from the Buddhist point of view, what are the causes and conditions that produce me and my experiences? This is the first level of dependent arising, how things come into existence in dependence upon causes and conditions. Well, we can talk about cups and tables and universes and carpets and knees and headaches and ears. They all are impermanent phenomena that come into existence in dependence upon various factors. We get it right when it comes to knees and cups and toilets and tables. We're very good at this. We call that science. Although the trouble is, it doesn't help us see the emptiness of the table. So it doesn't help us. But when it comes to the object called I, we've lost the plot. We've never had the plot. So we're living in complete insanity when it comes to the object called I, which of course is the big deal. Like I say, it was the Hindus in this amazing investigation of the nature of an I, a self, an Atma, that Buddha then picked up and took and went in his own direction with, which is what we are using as our hypotheses right now in our way to live our lives, choosing Buddha's way of seeing things. So just this one alone is so empowering to stop so much of our daily rubbish and fears and confusion and suffering, to understand the cause and the conditions that produce me. And of course, Buddha calls that karma. So this word we use in such a mistaken way, in such a colloquial way, and very mistaken, even most Buddhists. It's just the word, it seems like, I don't know, speak Sanskrit, but he says it seems that the word means action. But the key The thing, what does karma, what does actions, the real one that is the point is the mind. They call them mental actions. So every thought is a mental action, basically, in this sense of the word karma. And the point of this here is when we in the world, we know we have lots of thoughts, but we don't think they cause anything. When it comes to emotional thoughts, we even say, oh, well, it's only in the mind, it doesn't matter. We actually think that. Unbelievable. We have no understanding of the power of mind. Now, we do understand the power of mind when it comes to you becoming a musician. We know you've got to fill your head with very accurate thoughts. Then you'll become a musician. We don't say it like that, but this is exactly correct. We can't just make up what we think Bach is saying. You'll be a mad person. No, you've got to do what Bach says, and you've got to read his language on that piece of paper and fill your mind with those thoughts exactly. Then they will express themselves through your fingers on the piano. This is exactly what Buddha is saying. We've got to get it correct. We've got to fill our minds with the correct thoughts. And he is suggesting, his view is, and that's for us to find out, don't just believe him. So that's why I like to say I'm using Buddha's thoughts, Buddha's views as my working hypothesis. So I have that. What that means is if I want to understand myself, why I suffer, why I'm happy, what is this, why does that happen, why does one person get born to be a cannibal, why does one person get born with compassion, why does one person get born as a sex fiend, why does one person like to eat too much food. We have no understanding of this in our culture because we don't have a view of karma. We only have a view that mummy and daddy made us, and if we can't see the symptoms in mummy and daddy of a cannibal, then we don't know why a child likes to eat human hearts. I mean, I'm mentioning that now because when I was in France, a psychologist at the course was a psychologist in prisons, and she's mentioning these two brothers who killed one of the men's girlfriends so they could eat her heart. So, of course, that freaks us out completely. And, of course, there's no way in Western psychology we have any means at all to understand that behavior. We have no way to understand why a person is born as an anorexic. If we can't find the cause in the mummy and daddy, which is the materialist view of dependent arising, that it's mummy and daddy and the genes, that's all we posit, and behavior. If we can't find a cause there, then we're lost. And this is why we're so confused about most human beings on this earth. We come up with these weird, complicated labels, and no one knows why. Nobody knows why. So Buddha's got this very interesting view, you know. So first of all, you know, the nuts and bolts of karma demand an understanding of mind, the key player in the law of karma. This is the dependent arising of a person. This is why to think about karma is a powerful method to understand yourself more deeply. It's not rocket science. It's not, you know, it leads to emptiness, but it's the very first step to understand why you are who you are, why you have these tendencies, why you want to do this, why you don't want to do that, why you have depression, anger, jealousy, why you're good at football, why you're good at killing. All of it is in this understanding of the dependent arising of a person. It's called the law of karma. It's not just some abstract idea that we should or should not think about. It's unbelievably central. Because you see, dependent arising in the first level is understanding what a thing is in terms of what produced it is its causes. This happens to be a powerful method for lessening the grasping at the instinct to believe it's self-existent, that I am self-existent, that there's an inherent little me in there. So it has so many immediate benefits in Buddhist practice. It leads to emptiness, finally. But it's a powerful method, first level of practice, to start really making changes in our life, and indeed to really help us deeply comprehend our own self in a really practical way. Be your own therapist in the best way. And so the nuts and bolts of this are we have to understand the mind. We have to understand Buddha's model of the mind because they're the components of a mind and they literally are what a person is made up of. We're made up of body and we're made up of mind. That's it. So we have to understand a mind, what the components are, Buddhist psychology. And we have to understand the law of karma, because this is what produced this mind in the shape it is at the moment, this person. And that just means understand what the mind did in the past to produce this present tendencies. Because one simple example of this law of karma, and Buddha says, yes, it's a natural law. He did not make it up. He's not speculating. He has observed it to be so, that the mind is not physical. The mind is a continuity of mental moments, and the mind is full of tendencies. Well, this is the simplest way of describing karma. What your personality is your tendencies. And what your tendencies are, guess what? They're a bunch of habits. And where'd you bring them from? From before. Not from your mummy and daddy. No. You didn't bring a single thing from your mother and father. You learned masses of things from your mother and father. But listen, I learned music from my mother. But everybody says, oh, Robina's good at music because mummy is a musician. Indeed, she was. No, not precisely true. It's missing a crucial point. If I did have a tendency to be good at music, it's because I practiced it before. That's all. And I had that tendency in my mind, and then I happened to have a mother who was also good at music. And why was she good at music? Because she had the tendency to play music. So then she taught me music because she could recognize I had a tendency. So I was a willing victim. I listened to every word she said, and I drank it up because I had the tendency. But she didn't give me music. And this is the hugest misconception that we have. And we can say it so easily. But it's a fine and incredible point to make. You know, when you go to, you go to your therapist and you're depressed, you're jealous, you're angry, you're fearful. That the only way, the only place your therapist can look for the causes of this are to your mummy and daddy, your genes, your DNA, your past. That's the only place we have to look. Why? Because I'm a product of my mummy and daddy. So the logic appears good. But Buddha says it's not completely, but it's fundamentally flawed as an explanation. And that's why you can't find in Hitler's genes and DNA or in mummy and daddy's behavior tendencies to want to kill 6 million Jews. Excuse me. There's no evidence in Mother Teresa's mummy and daddy that they were saints. There's no evidence, I don't think, in Mozart's mother that showed that she was genius at music. So we just say in the West, well, we haven't found the answer yet. That's fine. At least we're open-minded about it. And then why is a person a cannibal? Why is a person compassionate? Why is a person anything? We can't find the genetic reason for it. So therefore we're confused. Well, Buddha says it's mental. Your mind doesn't come from your mother. Your mind doesn't come from your father. Your mind doesn't come from a creator. Your mind comes from previous moments of itself. It's a continuity of mental moments, a river of mental moments. Intellectually, not a difficult concept. Just have to buy into it, that's all, and think it through and use this as the explanation. So, then we have, so we've got two things. There's two things here. There's your own tendencies right now. So we look at different people, we see an anorexic, we see a cannibal, we see a torturer, we see a fisherman, we see a musician, we see a compassionate person who doesn't kill. They all got these certain, would say that's their kind of mind. Some person's very deluded, some person's very nice. So we can then, and those tendencies, what we've got to do here is simply see, Buddha says, why do you want to eat human hearts? Well, we have to deduce from being an animal in the past, Buddha says this is the point. This is an animal activity. Frankly, most of the habits we have as humans are indeed animal tendencies. Eating, having sex, all the deluded things we do, all the things that are driven by attachment. In this gross physical way, they're actually animal tendencies. And we have them because we brought them from being animals in the past. The human qualities that are called human, that are unique to the human, are said to be the intelligence. So we can see it's a pretty deluded type of human rebirth. According to Buddha's model of the universe, eons ago, a human birth before this planet, was that we had subtle light bodies. The mind was super intelligent. There were no gross delusions at all. That was a really pure human rebirth. And it lasted a long time and easy to get enlightened. Because there were none of the gross delusions and therefore gross physical body that interfered. But here we are, so a few eons' time, delusions began to grow again, and that polluted the consciousness, which began to pollute the wind energies which the consciousness is linked with. This is the tantric explanation, which is very helpful to understand us. Then gradually, we kind of dragged, whoever the humans were, dragging the human rebirth down lower and lower, more and more deluded. And at some point a few million years ago, then a human person was born on this planet looking like a bunch of chimpanzees, I mean, it's very depressing. So all these, this is literally what Buddha would say. All these things, which we're so sophisticated at, cooking, having sex. I mean, dogs just go boom, boom. They're done, Excuse me. Their food, they go, and it's finished. No dishes to wash, no things to buy, no dining rooms, no chairs, no tables, no beds, no sheets, no houses, no design, no architecture, no cooking courses. So this, I mean, it sounds a bit depressing for us, but this is the point, that all the things that animals do really well, because we're intelligent, the best we can do in our materialist world is be fancy cooks and have sex in a fancy way and design fancy beds to have our sex in. I mean, get my point. So it's degenerate times, people. We call it art, So we have to make them. But one of the key things here is we've got to distinguish. This is Buddha's psychological view between what is called a human characteristic and an animal characteristic. Because it's confusing, because we are born on the same planet, and even our scientists call us animals. Because on the face of it, we are closer to animals than to the Buddha's view of a human mind, which are necessarily the virtuous states of mind. They are the human characteristics. It's obvious that, they're in short demand. Look at the earth. Look at the human realm, It's very depressing. So how amazing we can access a few of these. How fortunate, how fortunate, how fortunate. So, all our tendencies, we have to look into our tendencies super clearly, because that's one of the 4 ways our actions, mental actions from the past have programmed our consciousness, have sown seeds in our consciousness and ripened in the present. One of the 4 ways. The first one is getting a human body in the first place. The second one is all the tendencies in that mind. The third is all the experiences you have, all the people you meet. Basically, we can see we do all our lives. We're very social beings, aren't we? And in Western psychology, we're defined in terms of being social. We exist in dependence upon others, in the literal sense, but we think emotionally we need others to exist, which is the one, of course, of attachment. But we look how we are living around others. We have enemies, we have friends, and we have strangers. Well, we're going to keep meeting each other, people. We're going to keep bumping into each other because karma's super personal. When you kill a particular being, usually. When you love a particular being. Well, you're creating an intensely strong history with each other, and guaranteed you're going to bump into each other again. So the third way our karma from the past ripens in the present is in relation to all these sentient beings. The humans, the rats, the rapists, the terrorists, the murderers, the kind ones. They're beings we have got an intensely strong karmic history with. And all the third way our karma plays out is our own past actions in relation to them coming back to us. And the fourth one, of course, is environmental karma, the very way the world we live in appears to us, responds to us, to which we respond to, whether it's the people, the occupants, the animals, the dirty stuff, the beautiful stuff, the weather, all of that's environmental, you know. The tendencies is the one I'm talking about here. In order to understand yourself, in order to understand another self, a person, the rapist, the terrorist, the anorexic, the this, the alcoholic, the lover, the kind one, the pianist. There's just a bunch of tendencies, you know. And so the logical conclusion of having done something before is that you're good at doing it. It's like hardly rocket science. So Mozart, we can deduce. He practiced that kind of thing before, you know. We can deduce the person, like, you know, these, you read about, you know, I remember reading about these different, you know, people who like to eat human bodies, cannibals, you know, people who like to torture. It's not rocket science when you have the view of karma. Look at animals. They spend their lives, the wild ones, eating each other or being eaten, having sex, eating each other, ripping each other's guts out every day. But our trouble is we call it nature. We put the cameras up close and we bring the children in to look. So if two humans did this and you put the cameras up close and brought the children in to look, you'd be put in jail for cruelty. But we do this with animals. And the other fascinating thing about animals, it seems to me, if, you know, there's the mummy lion ripping the guts out of the buffalo for breakfast, and that's called nature. But, you know, if a human beats up a dog, you want to kill that human. You get so angry. Well, how come we don't get angry at the lion? It's so deluded, you know, because we're so sentimental about animals. We can't, any human who harms an animal, I mean, unbelievable. But no one minds if the lion does it to the buffalo. Oh, that's natural, we'll say. Well, it's natural for a mean person to harm somebody as well. It's called natural. There's no difference. So animals, it's the nightmarish realm to exist in. We've done this life countless times. And that's where we do most harm. Way more than humans. We're more clever as humans, you know. But animals, just the raw panic and fear. First of all, and this is why it's so important to understand this. The Buddhist view of the mind, Buddhist psychology, the model of the mind, this, you know, the hierarchy of the delusions in the category called negative states. All sentient beings who are in, you know, the ones in samsara, the ones who, when you're in samsara, you have this ego grasping, this ignorance, this maripa, this primordial ignorance of how things exist, and at another level, ignorance of cause and effect. This is the root delusion. It gives rise to attachment, its main voice. All the realms of existence have it. The Buddhist model of mind refers exactly to an ape as to a human. There's no difference. And when you understand this, it's a revelation because you use this as your basis. The trouble is in the West, most of us Buddhists, even Westerners, we're so addicted to the Western view of what people are. We don't notice the Buddhist one, so we're not applying it. You know? If we say we're Buddhist, what happened? If we say we're Buddhists, we've got to use Buddhism, you know? I mean, if Buddhism's enough to get enlightened, like I keep liking to say, it's enough to understand your own mind. Excuse me. But we all think, oh, I've got to go to the doctor and be diagnosed as bipolar, or I'm an anorexic, or, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's just Western labels. They're fine. I'm not complaining. But use Buddhist labels. I can't stand these microphones. I'm sorry. I have to talk like this. Okay. So, okay, I'm on track here. I'm trying to keep focused on dependent arising, to realize yourself, to understand emptiness, to sort out your suffering, you know. So, the components here are your tendencies. Tendency, seeming like instinct, isn't it? The instinct to do something. Of course, that's what we call instinct in the West. No one knows why it's there. That's why we call it natural when a lion does it. That's just what lions have to do, we'll say. No, Buddha says, a lion is like that mummy lion, because you can locate, first of all, unbelievable ego grasping, 1 billion times more intense than the worst ego grasping human, 1 billion times more intense, which gives rise to 1 billion times more intense attachment to get what she wants, which gives rise to, in her case, because she's got the body to match it, the long claws. You try to rip the guts out of buffalo with your breakfast with your long red nails. Forget it. They're not made for it, you know. But the lion, she's got these claws. She's made, she joined the little lion mummy's house because she came with this aggression. What do you want aggression for? To get her breakfast. She uses aggression based on to get her attachment what it wants, and her huge rage and her aversion and her greed and her stupid, ignorant mind, overrun by these delusions, no choice. And as the buffalo's screaming in agony, its eyes as wide as plates, blood coming out everywhere, guts on the ground, the mummy lion is profoundly ignorant of it. She gets her babies and they lie there and they have their hot lunch. If this is not ignorance, I don't know what is. This is this is the Buddha's view. This is unbelievable ignorance. These are the dependent arisings of the self of a lion, which helps you in this case understand conventionally what a lion is. What is a lion? A lion is the personification of ignorance and attachment with aggression to get what it wants. That's essentially what a lion is. All the other bits and pieces and jealousy and this and that, All the animals the same. All the creatures, all the slugs, all the fish, all the giraffes, all the dogs, all the little bugs down on the ground who just pump out babies 1,000 an hour, like these big baby machines, these slugs under the earth. Just get pumped in one end by the worker bees and out come babies, 1,000 a day or an hour or something. Beyond belief. There's a group of apes or chimpanzees, from the second they're born, they turn around and they jump on their mummy and have sex. Then on daddy, on the brother, on the sister, on the auntie, on the uncle. They'll jump on anybody. I mean, what's this called? It's sexual attachment. Then we look at humans, same thing, but kind of mild. The apes leave us for dead, Buddha's view of the mind. So that the tendencies are what you have brought with you from having practiced them before. And this is not rocket science. We know that in this world. You do anything enough and you'll be good at it. As they have a saying in Tibetan, with familiarity, nothing is difficult. Or the way that Rinpoche said it, with familiarity, nothing is not easy. There's nothing that isn't easy. With familiarity, there's nothing that isn't easy, which gives us courage to get enlightened. So this is why, if we understand the way the mind is, and this is the Buddha's view of karma, one of the ways karma works is the tendency to keep doing it. This is called habit, So we come born into this world with a bunch of habits, basically. So we can deduce that the cannibal, who we don't understand in the West, no idea why you want to eat somebody's heart and get pleasure from it. Well, just some habit from the past lives that you bring into yourself in this life, Maybe it's attachment to meat, who knows? And then it multiplies, because they say one of the key things about attachment, all the delusions and the virtues, all the tendencies, that, we work really hard at them in this life. Let's say we got to work really hard at giving up alcohol. It feels like such an effort. It's in your mind all the time. You wish you could have it. You struggle every day. Every day you don't drink the alcohol. It feels like very difficult. Well, next life, you won't have even the tiniest taste of being an alcoholic, because your effort and giving up attachment next life has multiplied hugely, and equally with the delusions. And this is why attachment, and we see our world with more and more and more deluded, craving for objects, for what we call sexual attachment. I mean, the old-fashioned idea was a girl and a boy got together. Now it's a girl and a dog, a boy and a boy and two boys, upside down, drinking this, doing that. I mean, we do anything now for what we call sexual attachment. When you talk about these torturers, they get their sexual pleasure from it. Well, don't mystify sexual. Sexual attachment is just a very stronger version of attachment, that's all. Whether it's attachment to a cake, or attachment to killing, or attachment to eating human hearts, or attachment to being skinny, it's all the same attachment. And for some objects, for some attachment, when we call it sexual, is because the attachment is very, very, very strong. So it triggers very, very strong feelings. It's not illogical if we understand it. You know, think it through, think it through. So, you know, one of these torturers I read about, a serial killer and torturer, he got as he called it, he got sexual pleasure from torturing. The fellow with eating the heart, he probably gets sexual pleasure, we call it. Well, we find that horrifying to even think of. Well, sexual just means, you know, when lots of energy is triggered in the body. And if you're a boy, things stand up, you know, like my friend Panos, the little boy, 6-year-old, he was turned on by ordinary old-fashioned thing called a girl. When he was 6 years old, walking down the street of Athens, Mummy, we saw a poster of a naked lady. Mummy, why is my penis standing up? You know, well, another boy I read about who's a furry. Have you heard of furries? They're people who are attached to having sex with their stuffed toys. You go buy a piece of cloth in the supermarket, you cut it into the shape of Mickey Mouse, you put little things on it and a mouth, and then your little thing stands up. This shows how we all make everything up. And why? Because of attachment to animals in the past life. So this life, you get turned on sexually when you see an animal. He said when he was 6 and he'd go to the sports, he got turned on by the Mickey Mouse mascot, not the girls, you know. Of course, we're confused about this in the West. Nobody knows why. Well, he's been attached to animals in the past, to cartoons and our toys and our pets. So back off from your pets, please. If you're going to have a pet, be kind to it, give it dharma, feed it, help it create merit, not just make your attachment happy. It's disgusting, you know. Huh? Who said something?
My dogs hear the mantras and everything, and they stay.
What? Good. Well, I'm saying give up attachment because you'll turn into a dog next life. We don't want that. This is how Buddha talks about karma. We make ourselves, we create our own reality. By understanding this, we understand ourselves. Eventually, it'll help us understand emptiness. So everything we think, Buddha says, leaves a seed in the mind that will ripen in the future as a tendency, an experience, or an environmental result. Not to mention the type of body you get, you know. This is dependent arising for a person, for me. So when we can see, an anorexic, a terrorist, a fisherman, a kind person, a cannibal, a furry, we'll be able to think it through logically using Buddha's view of karma. Rather than just buying into the Western view, well, no one knows. It's obsessive this and compulsive that, you know, they're just our words. Nothing wrong with them. Buddhas are fine too. They work for Buddha, become enlightened, I'm happy with that. Are we communicating here? Yes. Okay, good. So understanding karma explains to you how come you are who you are now, right now. Everything about you can work out. Like if you're an architect or an engineer or a builder, you can look at a building and you could go backwards and break it down into all its component parts and all the causes that had to come together to produce that building, couldn't you? If you're a cook, you could do the same because you know the causes of a cake. You could break it down. Well, that cake has this much, and I can tell the number of eggs, and it's got this much. So we have to do the same with a person. First, our person, and then we can see other persons. It is not rocket science. We can learn to understand them. Oh, they must have practiced attachment before. That's hardly not. Rather, what did their mother do to them, you know? This is just a red herring. What about it? What's your question? Sweetheart, what's that question mean? What about it? What do you mean, what about? Excuse me, don't mind your own business. Don't look at people, you don't know anything. You don't know their mind, darling. Tibetans have a saying, you don't know anybody's mind. You don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. So don't talk about other people. Tell us about your attachment to your spiritual practice, if you have it. And if you don't, then leave it alone.
No, I don't, and sometimes I feel guilty.
But what do you mean? Well, what's the question mean? Please ask the question another way.
Okay.
Tell me.
I'm thinking about material.
I don't care about all this. Tell me what you mean by attachment to your spiritual practice. What would it look like if you were attached to your spiritual practice?
That I will feel guilty, or I will live my life just making practices and rituals and.
Excuse me, I think it's quite nice. What's wrong with that? At least it's a better activity than killing people, than eating food all day, than having sex and gossiping about people. Is that not a slight step forward? Is that not slightly better than doing the other things? Is it not a reason to rejoice for a person? At least they're not killing and lying and stealing and raping people. Is it not slightly better? Is it not slightly better than doing the bad things?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, then
when
good
it's
enough.
Sincere, when it's sincere.
Excuse me.
When it's,
Excuse me.
yeah, I'm judging.
You bloody well are. It's outrageous. Don't do it. Come on. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Honey, I know what you're talking about. But excuse me. Back off. Mind your own business and look at your own mind. That applies to all of us. Not her, just her. She's the one who's brave enough to ask. Listen, honey, it's obvious we can do things with attachment. We do. There's no question. And you're going to have attachment until you realize emptiness. So be humble and patient. At least you rejoice. Of course, people become, if you become fanatic about something that causes you to be self-centered, that's not Dharma practice, dear. That's called, you poison your practice. But at least we see how fortunate we've moved one step forward and are attached to, I'd love to be attached to my practice to make it a lot easier. I know what you're saying, but think of what I'm saying too.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Yeah? What, darling?
I just hope that you don't reprimand me the same way,
I cannot guarantee it.
I
But
know,
you're
I
brave.
love you immensely. I write to Alberto and I say, she's like a swirl, like a hurricane. Every time you come,
Okay.
you change our core.
All right, darling. Go on.
Okay, I don't see why, it's me that I do not understand how you compare a lion and the bodiness
Sure.
of a lion is the
Uh-huh.
animal kingdom
Yes.
to our ignorance. We are,
Sure.
okay, please don't kill me, but I'm going to confess, I do yoga, I love Buddhism, but sometimes I guess, my protein level goes down and I feel like eating a piece of chicken,
Darling, this is not the discussion we're having here. I don't care if you eat meat. That's not what we're talking about here.
Okay,
What
so-
we're trying to do, what's your
Okay.
name?
Aidita,
Idita.
yes. ma'am.
Idita, sweetheart. What
Thank
we're
you.
doing here is trying to explain, I'm trying to show how Buddha's view of why sentient beings do things is very different from our materialist explanation of why sentient beings do things. So what I'm saying, the key point is that Buddhist psychology refers to all sentient beings. This is Buddha's point. It's not just unique to humans. So if Buddha's view of the mind says we have negative states of mind, we have positive states of mind, and we have a third category, which is all like the mechanics of our mind, that are neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. This is what Buddha's model of the mind says. One. Second, Buddha says there are many realms of existence of sentient beings. This is the one model of the mind that refers to them all. So I'm just telling you what Buddha says. It's very simple. That an animal has a type of mind that is predominantly, in fact, 100% delusions. That means ignorance, which is the root delusion, which clings to the sense of self. That means attachment to get what that self wants. That means aggression and anger, which it uses to get what it wants. And there's no virtue to help it, calm it down. How come we're not all raping and killing every day? Is only because we can access the human qualities called compassion and wisdom and kindness. That's Buddha's model of the mind. I'm not making anything up.
Okay, but there's like some animals, some dogs that are vicious and some are like
That's right, because
docile.
all
They're-
humans are the same, and animals, we've got different characteristics. There's, you get a koala bear in Australia who eats, eucalyptus leaves all day.
Yes, yes.
And it's fat
He's
and lazy.
vegetarian.
So, okay, but that's not, so what? There's all kinds of animals and there's all kinds of humans. Some are more peaceful, some are more violent. But the point is this, Buddha's model of the mind is very clear. There are states that are called negative, which are the ones that cause suffering, and they're ignorant. So that's ignorance, attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, all of these states. So just think what an animal is only those. Only those. They can't put two and two together. They're stupid. They're as thick as posts. They're idiots. They're hugely ignorant, therefore hugely suffering. humans, we have some access, are we not fortunate, to intelligence, to think about things, to change our mind, to have compassion, to be kind, to forgive. They are unique to a human. I'm not saying we humans are special. We're garbage dump. We're like animals. But I'm trying to use Buddhist psychology to explain it. It's not a judgment. It's nothing like that. It's just simply explaining Buddha's view. This is Buddha's view. So all I'm getting at is to use this as our basis for attempting to understand a cannibal, an anorexic, a kind person, or for that matter, a lion. There's no difference. A spirit is a predominantly, like a hungry ghost they talk about. They're beings, sentient beings, whose minds are conjoined with air energy, so are not visible to our eyes, and they're predominantly attachment. Animals are predominantly ignorance. Then you've got the hell realm, who are beings who are predominantly rage and anger. This is Buddha's psychology. It's his psychology, it's his view, his observations of the universe. Do you see?
Yes.
That's all. So he might be wrong, sweetie.
No,
But no, really, I'm serious.
No, I came a little bit late and I caught you in the explanation of the bloody lion and all that, and now I
see the reason why I'm talking this way.
Yes,
I understand.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So again, the point I'm getting at here is as a method for helping us understand our own self. This is the discussion that Buddha came out of. This is the discussion the Hindus started thousands of years ago, and from which came this amazing technique called single-pointed concentration. Buddha came out of this tradition, and he moved forward into his own position on these topics, which is all where emptiness comes in. The nature of self. What is a self? What is a person? In other words, and so one of the practical issues in the very first level of dependent arising is the causes and conditions that produce a person. So this is a good way to argue in our own mind to help us break down the grasping at the inherent self. But I'm talking here in a really practical way. To think about causes and conditions that produced me is also the most marvelous method to simply understand myself in a really simple, practical, down-to-earth way, and therefore other sentient beings. And so what I'm getting at is the two main components in this are past karma, the stuff your mind has done that has programmed your mind, that then causes you to be born with a certain kind of mind, with certain kind of tendencies, from having done them before. You don't look to your mummy and daddy for them, or the genes or your grandpa. You look to your own past. And by looking at the present, you can deduce the past. It's hardly rocket science. If a person's born into this life good at music, you can deduce they must have practiced something like that before. Then the little boy who sees the fishing at the age of 5 and runs like a magnet and lives the rest of his life in the fantasy world of attachment to being a fisherman, we can deduce he must have had imprints of killing in the past. It's not complicated. We make it complicated in the West. If a person has the tendency to want to kill a human to eat its flesh, called cannibal, that's from animals. Just observe animals. It's not criticizing animals. We've been animals our lives, countless lives in the past, Buddha says. You know? How come even the fisherman, a human being, like this example I give of this little boy, or a son of my mother, the son of a friend of mine. She said from the time he was tiny, he ran like a magnet. So we'd all ask in the world, I wonder why he decided to be a fisherman. Well, no one knows why. He just liked it. Rubbish. Because he had a tendency that he saw it again and he fell in love with fishing. Off he went. Spent his life being a fisherman, living in like the world of being a fisherman, in love with fishing. And when you're in love with something, you think about it all the time. We're in love with food. Some of us are in love with sex. Some of us are in love with torturing. Some are in love with eating human hearts. Depends on the tendencies you brought with you from the past, Buddha says. You know, whatever they are, you can see it right there. There's the proof. You must have done it before, babe. That's all. Hardly rocket science. Another little boy, son of a friend of mine, he's 3 years old and she's taking the lice out of his head. And there he is crying with compassion. Mummy, mummy, don't hurt them. It's their home. I mean, she hadn't taught him this. The fisherman, mummy hadn't taught him this. The little boy who liked to eat human hearts, his mummy didn't teach him this. You know, the torturer's mummy didn't teach him that. Where'd they come from? Past actions, your own mind, your own psychology, your own tendencies, your own past practice. It's not a very difficult concept. We just have to sort of hypothesize it, that's all. This is Buddha's view. It explains why you're born like this. Then you look at your parents, and then and you can look into your life and think, well, if your parents, your mummy's mean to you, and we go, you know, how dare be she mean to me because I didn't ask to get born. You go to your therapist and you want to sue your mummy because she's mean. Well, no, Buddha says, look at your karma, baby. If you've got a mummy who's mean to you, well, then you're just getting your own stuff back right there. Well, hello, mummy. Welcome home. Beat me again. So whatever you meet out there, if they love you, if they hate you, they're kind to you, they give to you, they steal from you. If it's ugly, if it's beautiful, whatever it is, as Lama Zopa says, that's your karmic appearance. That's the fruit of your past actions. So we are the blame, yes, but for the good things too. There's this woman, because we always hear karma as bad, you know, as negative. We agonize, why do bad things happen to me? We never agonize, why do good things happen to me? We don't care why. Just give me more, you know. There's this one woman, I remember at Courtin Monastery. She was in a wheelchair, and we're talking about karma, and she, like everybody, only hears it in relation to the bad things. So she was in tears, and she said, you mean I'm the blame for this? And I thought about how to answer her, and I said, yes, you are the blame for why you're beautiful, for why you're so kind, for why you want to practice a spiritual path, for why you have such good friends. You did it. And she heard the point. Because we only ever think of the bad because we are addicted to the blame mode. You know? It's just explanation, not blame, it's an explanation. Buddha's explanation for how come I am who I am, why I want to do this, why do I want to do that, why does that happen to me? Because both of these, what happens to you and what you want yourself, these are the two of the tracks of your past tendencies, how they ripen. So this is the most marvelous tool, if you're trying to be a Buddhist, to explain yourself to yourself, and therefore easy to explain to you another person. And that's how come you can help them. You know? Because you've got to know your own self first. Then you can help another. This is the dependent arising of I, you know. And of course, slowly what it does is lessen the guilt, lessen the blame, lessen the attachment, lessen the anger, which are the consequences of the view that I'm an innocent victim who didn't ask to get born, which is the view of self-existence. So the consequence of all of thinking about karma is it loosens the grip of that self-pity, that ego, and you begin to slowly see, therefore, wow, there's no I from its own side, which is emptiness. But because we're so entrenched in these views right now, it's hard to see this. So we need to have the view of karma, just a few little bits. And Geshe Sopa, for 25 years, kindly taught it. 25 years he took to teach Lamrim Chenmo, you know, in Wisconsin. Yang Rinpoche has given these amazing teachings on the whole Lamrim. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, one of Yang Rinpoche's gurus, is unbelievable in these teachings. They're all there for us to learn. The nuts and bolts of karma, they're all there in the teachings. They're all there. They're all there for us to learn. Anytime we like, we can learn them. It's up to us to go searching the explanations, you know. At least give us the nuts and bolts of the right words that we can use to then explain ourselves to ourselves, rather than buy into the view of self-pity, not fair, poor me, how dare you do this to me, I don't deserve it, and you better give me more because I do deserve it. Because attachment is the view of the innocent victim that blames the person out there for making me happy, and so expects it. Give me more. Aversion is the view when attachment doesn't get what it wants and so blames that person for making me suffer. How dare you do that to me? These are the actual consequences of ego grasping, which is the view that I didn't ask to get born, the view that my past has nothing to do with me, the view that I have no past, the view, as Lama Zopa says, that my mind doesn't play any role at all in who I am. What a joke Buddha says, your mind plays all the roles. The world is merely secondary. as far as the Buddha is concerned. The world and what we see and experience is the result even of our own delusions, our own virtues. We are the creator, quite literally. It's a very different view. And until we put these words into our mind, this will not come, this view. And this is the basis, dependent arising, first level, to trigger the insight like, duh, therefore there's no I in here, from its own side, which is the view of the self-pity me, the blame, the guilt, the shame, the attachment, the anger. They're the voices of the self-pity me. They're the voices of believing in the innocent victim me, the self-existent me, the me that didn't ask to get born, the me that's inherent. They're all just emotional words for that one. So thinking about karma breaks this one down, grows us up, makes us accountable, makes us brave and fearless, makes us take responsibility, therefore helps us realize emptiness. Now the second one, that there is no I that does exist, that doesn't depend upon its parts. There's no I apart from the parts. There can't be. This is more tasty into just me now, analysing the actual product itself and breaking it down into its component parts in our search for this instinctive self-pity me that we think is existing there, apart from the parts, like over the parts, above the parts, running the parts, the landlord, the boss, the puppeteer, the mini-me. This is the feeling of it, this self-pity me. You won't find that one among the parts. You won't find that one among the parts. Because Buddha says it's very easy. If something does exist, it doesn't take long to find it. You work out your parameters of your search. This is in the Lam Rim. You know, the first step in the 4-part meditation on looking for the I, establishing the absence of the inherent I. The first step, the crucial step, is to identify what you think the I is. To identify, as they say, the object to be refuted. So you've got to, and this is the hardest part, they say. Once we've got this one clear, realizing the absence of it is falling off a log, is easy, it comes quickly. This step, this first one, is unbelievably difficult. This is the one that takes time. We can go looking for the I, but until we've established, which is the last stages of it, but they all depend upon success in the first step, which is being absolutely crystal clear about what you think the I is, which is the one you then have to search for using logic. But you can search till the cows come home. If you don't even know what you're searching for, you won't even notice if you find it. So it's useless searching if you don't even know what you're searching for. You don't even know what the object to be negated looks like. Then it's useless, wasting time to search for it. Like your search, your one, until you got the first one clear. So this one is amazing. To do this one well, and you'll hear it, implies already an incredible amount of inner work, an incredible amount of subdued body, speech, and mind, an understanding of the delusions, an understanding of the mind, the model, the Buddhist model of the mind. What is ignorance? What is attachment? What is anger? What is jealousy? What is love? What is compassion? Right now there's this big soup of feelings. It's about the best we can do is say, I feel something. We haven't got a clue to go further. We don't know how to articulate what even a delusion is. So it's not possible to do this step, which is taught in the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva at the level of the Bodhisattva path. The Babonka says the easier method, but for us so advanced, because we can't even do the first step, which is get clear in our mind, crystal clear, a clear picture in our mind of precisely how how the neurotic, how the self-existent I appears to our mind. This already takes so much work. But we don't even know how to distinguish one bit of our mind from another, so there's no way we can do this one. So it's way too much. We can start, we can try, but we've got to get it clear. So one of the key problems here is this. The person who's ready to identify the object to be negated is a person who is so happy to be insulted, so happy to be punched in the nose, so glad when things go wrong, so happy when somebody runs in front of you on the motorway and you get a shock. That person's waiting for experiences like that because that's the perfect moment when the fantasy I rises like a sleeping lion and you're dying for the opportunity to grab it and observe how it appears to you. This is implied already because where it's taught is in the six perfections. It's too advanced for us because what happens with us? Because we're still caught up in the victim mind, still craving to be attached, craving to be loved, craving to be praised, craving to have lovely words, craving for good reputation, craving for nice comfort. The millisecond we don't get what we want, we're launching into not fair, how dare you did this, and already even the first second of those thoughts, you've missed the opportunity. The I will disappear. It's too late. So you've got to have a mind that's already so subdued that already can identify delusions from virtues that you are really familiar with from having studied the Dharma and having meditated. So keen and wanting the opportunity to grab the way the I appears, and the only time it comes is when you've been offended, upset, hurt, insulted. Or when attachment gets what it wants, when a good thing happens, that's when the sense of the I comes. And that's the perfect opportunity. So the millisecond that a person insults you, you're so happy, you can't wait. They wish you'd do it again. Say that again. I want to see my eye, you know. Come on, please punch me again. No way. So forget trying to look for your eye. You're looking for something you don't even know what it looks like. You just look forever, you'll never see it. Because you don't know what it is. You haven't identified the object to be negated. Are we communicating? Time is it? Only 3 o'clock. Good heavens. Yes, ask some questions now. Come on. Ask some questions. Question time. What happened to my water? Here it is. Yes, talk to me. Uh-huh.
So Lama Zopa Rinpoche has said in some classes when he talks about emptiness.
I missed the first bit.
Okay, Lama Zopa, when he gives teachings, he said that when you meditate on emptiness a lot, you could reach a point where you feel fear.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. What does that mean, and
Oh,
what do you do with
great.
that? What do you do with that?
Oh, it's fantastic. He says, okay, I'll tell you here. I'll quote you in here. He says, it's in your notes. If you bother to get your PDF and print it out, you'd see it.
Yeah.
I know, I am rude. I agree with you. I'm extremely rude. I don't know why you don't throw me out the door. It's true. I'm very rude. Well, maybe when I get very old, I'll get polite. Okay. Oh, wrong document. Anyway, I'll find it. You'll find it in your document. Yeah, he says there are 2 signs. First of all, he says it's really, you need to know the words, but that's not realizing emptiness, obviously. You know, I can say the word's also clever, but I sit here very happily grasping at my clever eye, you know. So the first sign, the lesser, the inferior indicator that you've got some understanding of emptiness is that incredible fear comes. Even better, the best one is that bliss comes, joy. Okay. So what to do with it is be delighted. What does he say? It's on. Oh, the question.
Can you hear me? She says there's 2 signs. Can you repeat them?
The first sign of success is incredible fear. Even better than that, more advanced, is you have bliss. When you have a moment of seeing the absence of the fantasy I. So what to do with it? Okay, we all have fear. So we're not just talking about regular fear. It's fear that comes from a sound understanding of emptiness, a realization that there isn't one. You know it intellectually, and then you get a taste of it. So then if you're like that, you'll be happy that you've had it. It's like that story of Lama Tsongkhapa teaching his students, and he observes one of the monks when he's talking about emptiness. And he has this panic, and then he grabs onto his donka. And he actually it's like slightly more, but he had fear. He had fear. Oh my God, there's no I. And then he grabbed onto his donka, and Lama Tsongkhapa said that's actually when he realized subtle dependent arising, which is what you realize after emptiness. You realize what does exist. Then it calmed his fear down. So that would be a good way to deal with the fear. You realize dependent arising, which you do exist. It's okay. Because as Rinpoche says, you'll never, ever, ever, ever disappear. But if we don't understand this fear, and we have it anyway all kinds of time, which we do, it'll make us crazy, because we don't know how to deal with it. So that's ordinary fear. We have it all the time. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I have another question.
Yes.
If dependent arising is the king of logic for understanding emptiness, is it enough to really understand this particular system of logic? Are there other systems? Should we study the other systems?
I know, it's interesting. They say you have to learn so many. And there are many when you study the philosophy, as we know. But they always say that Tsongkhapa's trip is dependent arising. It's the main one. He wrote that blissful text in praise of dependent arising. Yeah. So if you really, they say it's the best one for the best minds, he says. There are all kinds of other logical arguments, like the single and the multiple, all these different ones. But this seems to be the one that mostly Tsongkhapa and Lama Zopa only ever talks about. He uses other arguments in there, to get you to sort of squeeze your brain to see. But dependent arising seems to be the one that's the true intent of the Buddha. It's because dependent arising is the meaning of emptiness, the closest one to emptiness. Okay. And then when you've realized emptiness, there's this example, then you realize subtle dependent arising, which is conventionally how things exist.
Okay. And how do you know that was the Madhyamaka Prasangika view was Buddha's intent? If there's other schools,
yes,
should we study them?
I know, I agree. I know, I haven't enough. I don't know. I haven't done it enough. They do if you do all the philosophy. And they all say it can help you. Everybody I know who studied it in more depth says it does help you more deeply. There's no question. People who say they really study the Chittamatra view, because it's all great, as Geshe Tekchok. There's one amazing book on emptiness. I don't know if you've A Taste of Emptiness by Geshe Tekchok. You know him? It's been Thupten Chodron who put it together, and he taught emptiness at Land of Medicine Buddha for a year or so, all from his own experience for Westerners. And it's the most marvelous book in using all these different logical arguments, showing all the different approaches to realizing emptiness. And Geshe Tekchok said, it is really important to do it in the long term, because these are from their greatest yogis. They're not just flakes, They're really, this is coming from deep thinking. So in the long term, it has to help you. It's not just intellectual. It has to help you experientially, they say. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I don't talk about them because I don't know enough
traen
about
ese
them.
libro que ella dijo. El libro que ella acaba de decir, a ver si lo traen.
A Taste of Emptiness. A Taste of Emptiness.
Is it the one it's called? I'm just going to get it. I'll find it for you.
A Taste of Emptiness.
You're saying that's the one?
You're the one?
No,
yeah.
I've got to look for it.
Oh, she has
I just can't remember the book.
I'm just repeating what you
I know your words, so forgive me if it might be right. Let me just look for it.
Because they're writing it, they want to
No,
write
no,
it
it's a
down.
marvel. I don't know if it's in Spanish or not, but it's really worth it to be in English. It's one of the best books about emptiness. It's because it's taught.
It just came out, right?
It's a couple of years.
Oh no,
I can't see it now. I must have lost it. Thupten Chodron, and the author is Geshe Tekchok. You'll look it up. You'll see it easily enough. Maybe I got it in my Kindle and I haven't found it. This is my iBooks. I can't find it. I'll look for it here. I'll get it for you. Don't worry. Hang on. I think it's Taste of Emptiness. I'm asking Google. Google God. Geshe Tekchok. They all spell his name differently everywhere. Here it is, Taste of Emptiness, Geshe Tekchok. Let's see what it says. It's such a good book, so helpful. It's just taught, all from his own experience over the years, he presented all these different ways, which you normally don't see together, They're usually coming from different traditions. It's just not coming. I don't know what happened to it. You'll find it. Rob, well, okay. I'll find it later and let you know.
Okay.
It's
In
such
the
a good
break.
book.
In the break.
Such a nice book. Yeah, I will. Exactly. So any other questions, people? Anything you're puzzled about you want me to clarify? Where?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, yes, good.
Yeah. Sometimes, our motivation is mostly, if you really are really realistic about it, our motivation is Hinayana
That's right.
most
Totally.
of the time, right? But we
Well,
just-
not even Hinayana, samsara. Come on. Don't put yourself up there. Wow, not bad. Well, my motivation is, it's the 8 worldly dharmas, baby, which is attachment.
Yeah, exactly.
So go on, then.
So how do you become,
Okay.
how do you
Okay.
transform your motivation
Okay.
to become a Mahayana? If most of
Okay.
the day you're Hinayana,
Yes.
if
This is where we have to remember the words. This is, look, okay. The first level of practice, as you're saying, Hinayana, is to control, this is the first level of the Lam Rim. You control your body and speech. You back off, you don't harm sentient beings, as well as don't stuff too much cake in and don't stuff too many girls in. You calm your body and speech down, because they're the ones that they're the ones that do the wishes of the attachment, aren't they? And that's why sentient beings harm each other and create heavy negative karma and go mad. So the first level of practice, because attachment is the main problem, you've got to calm down the body and the speech. That's already an amazing level of practice. There's no discussion about motivation there. You just back off, leave sentient beings alone. Leave the cake in the plate. You control your body and speech. That's the first one. Then you get a bit more brave and you go to the second scope, to high school, and now you study the mind. Now you get to the root of the problems, which is the delusions, in particular, attachment. And as Lama Zopa says, this is already amazing, as Lama Zopa says, you've got renunciation when just the thought of another moment of attachment is so disgusting, it's like using used toilet paper. Just one example. Okay? Just the thought of another moment of attachment. So that proves already so advanced, it's like a joke, isn't it? That's so advanced you can't believe it. You're so repulsed by attachment. Whereas at the moment, it's our default mode. We don't know anything else. It's so primordial. So, okay, even there, the job is to get meditation, to get concentration, and to control your body and speech, and that's the Hinayana approach. You're so caught up in learning to subdue your insane body, speech, and mind, you just keep away from sentient beings. Leave them alone. Don't hurt them. Back off. Just let them be there. Now you get really brave, and you're going to get to the compassion wing. We're continuing to work on your mind. There's no difference. You're continuing to rip out attachment, rip out delusions, but now in reference to sentient beings. But still attachment runs the show. So the thing is this. It's going to be a long, long, long time before you're really rid of attachment. In fact, you're going to have it until you realize emptiness. So you've got to learn to walk along with it, bring it with you, but learn not to follow it. So that's a stupendously hard job. That's the main emphasis in the Hinayana. That's why they all go off into the mountains and go to the desert and just wear their robes and have one little small amount of food and hardly do anything with their body and speech. Because their attachment is so huge. You can't afford to be around sentient beings because you're creating too much negative karma. So if you're looking at just the Hinayana level, there's no wiggle room. You don't have an option. You're living in a world of attachment. And just by living the householder's life, you're necessarily following attachment. It's virtually impossible to give it up. As long as you have food, as long as you live in a house, as long as you have a partner, as long as you have children, as long as you have clothing, as long as you have all these things, they are the product of attachment. If we realize how deep attachment is, we will realize that in the ordinary life, I'm talking purposely here about just the Hinayana level. We're not discussing the Mahayana yet. Just at this level, this is why they say you cannot achieve liberation until you become a monk and go to the mountains and give it all up. Because the ordinary life, eating, sleeping, going to the toilet, a bit of sex if you have, every now and again, maybe that pops up, I don't know. I'm sure it doesn't last forever, but what happens, that one. So those things, those objects of the senses, they are driven now by attachment. That's just the way it is. So virtually, to live the ordinary life at this level of practice, the Hinayana level, it's like expecting to give up attachment to alcohol while continuing to drink it. It's literally impossible, right? Would you agree? Well, it's the same. Having food, having sex, having clothes, having children, having jobs, having houses, having possessions. They're less intense, maybe, than, being a junkie for alcohol. But basically, attachment is the junkie mind. And all the objects of our life are the objects of attachment. So as long as we're caught up in them, you can't do anything but continue attachment. So it's quite intense at the Hinayana level to give it up. Now, aren't we lucky, these holy lamas, and Lama Zopa spends day and night trying to get into our thick skulls the way to bring the attitude of bodhicitta into our life. And this is where it's hard. You see, they say, Rinpoche says, do everything with bodhicitta. We go, what are you talking about? We don't even know what it means, do something with bodhicitta. We get confused. So literally, what does he mean? Well, you've got to start with the thought. There's no option. You can't force bodhicitta when you're not there yet. So you've got to start with the thought. And this is the first level of practice. You start with the thought. That's why you've got to start with your morning practice. You start with taking refuge. You say the prayer, and I will do all this to become enlightened for the sake of sentient beings. It's like a joke for us to say it, because then we rush off and be mean to the husband next second. But it's okay. Don't put yourself down. When we understand karma, junior school, when we understand every thought leaves a seed, we will be so happy to say the words, I want to become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. You're not yet there, as ancient eons to come yet, but you've got to sow the seed, which means you've got to have the thought. So when we understand this, we will be glad to say those words. That's how you sow the seed. So, of course, the more you do in your daily life, you eat your food. Before you shove it in mindlessly, back at the refuge level, when we took refuge, we made a promise to our refuge lama that we would offer our first mouthful of food and drink to the Buddhas. Well, who remembers? Look at us. Look at us. This is refuge. Forget emptiness. Forget renunciation. Forget your bodhisattva vows. Forget your tantric vows. I mean, look how hard it is, So we don't, so lamas, all the lamas, giving us these methods. Think like this, think like that. We go, think, what's that mean? Why should I think? Oh, I'm trying to get bodhicitta, get a big heart, We're confused. So we have the thoughts. So you've got to remember as much as you can. You think. Okay, I'd like to use this example. See if it makes sense. It helps my mind. I'm sure I've used this before. You go to Nepal, you go to the mountains, and apparently lots of people have cataracts, okay? That's what I've heard. So let's say you go there, you go, oh my God, look at those cataracts. That's called compassion. Then you go, the brave one, remember the brave attitude of compassion we talked about last week, the brave attitude, the bodhisattva compassion says, what can I do to help? So then you have to answer your own question, and you check, well, am I a surgeon? Well, no. So then I can't do much, can I? I'm not going to rush in with my scalpel without being a surgeon and try and cut out their cataracts. They will thank me for leaving their cataracts alone. So you just don't go, oh, well, too bad, I can't help, and walk away, do you? This is what we have to cultivate. This takes time. So you're going to say, well, you know what? I'm going to come back to San Juan. I'm going to go to the university. I'm going to join the surgeon club, and I'm going to, the surgeon course. It'll take me 7 years, and I'll become a surgeon so I can go to Nepal and help them cut out their cataracts. You got my idea so far? It's not rocket science. We understand this. Now, this is how you do it every day. So, surgeon equals Buddha. Cataracts equals suffering. So then you say, what you're going to do is, okay, the best way to become a surgeon would be to go to university, do the day courses, and then do the night courses. Wouldn't it be the quickest way? You do it in 2 years. No sleep, no food, just study 24 hours a day. You would become a surgeon quite quickly, would you agree? That would be the best. But we're not qualified, are we? We're too lazy. So then what do? You go home. You have to have a house. Your mummy takes you, maybe your husband looks after you. So you have your husband. You have the house. So you get up and you go to bed. Then you say to yourself, why am I going to bed? I'm going to bed so I can be healthy because I can't not go to bed yet, so I can go to school tomorrow and I can study, become a surgeon. Why? So I can help all the people with cataracts. And you remind yourself of what your goal is. So you go to sleep, then you wake up in the morning. Oh, hi, oh God, what a drag. Today's Monday, oh, I'm so tired. Why am I awake? Why? Oh, I've got to go to school to become a surgeon. Why am I becoming a surgeon? So I can go to help people with the cataracts. So you leap out of bed. Then you're sitting there reading all your books, and people know you've been to Nepal. They know you've seen all these people. They say, look at you, lazy person, reading all those boring old medical books. Why aren't you up there helping the people with their cataracts? But I am. I'm studying to be a surgeon. Then you have lunch. Why aren't you having lunch? Oh, I've got to eat my lunch so I can become a surgeon, so I can be healthy, so I can go and help them with their cataracts. Are you can't get in the drift here. If you could go to university 24 hours a day, no sleep, no food, no sex, no drugs, best way to become a surgeon. Lama Zopa does it. Geshe Lama Kontrok in the mountains, 24 hours a day, meditating in Vajrayogini's Pure Land, no food, no sleep, didn't need it. That's the best. But we're all thick as posts. We're too lazy and fat and miserable. We can't do it yet. But we can start with the thought. Are we communicating here? Yes. You just got to remember it. Of course, it's not very exciting. I mean, the thought of being a Buddha to Venerable all sentient beings makes me tired. I can't, it's too much effort to even love one person. Are you kind of hearing we've got to be realistic. But we've got to kind of pump ourselves every day. So you've got to say the words. Why am I getting up? So I can keep working, become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings. Why am I breathing? So I can keep breathing, living, so I can do this and do that, and so I can help eventually become a Buddha so I can benefit sentient beings. And that will, and this is the point, this is the point, this is the point. That becomes the motivation for the action you do. Normally, if you don't think it, you go into bed, oh, I'm tired. That's called attachment. Normally, you eat. Why? Attachment. You have sex. Why? Attachment. You go to the movies. Why? Attachment. You don't go to the movies. Why? Attachment. Everything is driven naturally by attachment. And even not just that, food in its nature is a product of attachment. Being a surgeon is a bit better than being a gun maker maybe, but it's still mainly motivated by attachment, worldly concern, being seen as a high person instead of a low person. Most things in their nature are defined by being an action of attachment. So we are going to do those actions, being skillful bodhisattvas, but we simply pull out the attachment brick and we put in the bodhicitta brick. And this is how you practice doing everything with bodhicitta. And that changes the action, which means the karmic result. And slowly, that bodhicitta begins to become real. But you've got to start somewhere with the thought. Are we communicating? Yes. But you've got to remember it. We've got to remember it. We mostly don't, because why? Because we're all, I mean, we should be really crying with happiness, because we're so, if we compare with the rest of the world, it's not being arrogant here. Anyone who's trying to practice virtue, that's the 1% we're part of, not the 1% who are rich. Lama Zopa says even just having a kind thought is so incredible in this crazy world, you know. So to actually think that we've got some karmic imprint from the past that even thinks the thought and says a prayer, I want to become Buddha to sentient beings. Oh my God, unbelievable. So count your lucky stars, feel happy, and just keep saying it. Like, you know, practice makes perfect, babies. Just keep saying it, and slowly, slowly, you'll actually become full of compassion. But you can't do it before you're ready, and if you don't say the thoughts, it will never happen. So it's like you've got to learn a new script for your life. But this is how you, quotes, do all actions of daily life with bodhicitta. And of course you add emptiness to the mix, and that makes it even more potent, you know. But you've got to remember the words. You've got to remember the words, because words are thoughts. And everything, as Lama Zopa says, they have a saying in Tibetan, everything exists on the tip of the thought, the wish, the intention. The meaning of the word intention is the word karma. And here we're meaning the motivation behind it, you know. You just have to remember that's all. Slowly it happens. And then, of course, every time you get up, you remember you're going to be a surgeon. Every time you eat, you remember you're doing it to become a surgeon. Every time you go to your boyfriend with the movies, you remember you're doing it so you can be relaxed, so you can go and be a good surgeon. you keep remembering this, then because your motivation gets more and more clear, and as you keep doing your surgery, 2 years, 3 years, you get more motivated because you get better at it, you're seeing the goal coming, you get more enthused, then you'll never get sidetracked, will you? Because if suddenly one day you forget to say, why am I eating so I can be a surgeon? Why am I sleeping so I can be a surgeon? If you forget you're going to be a surgeon, you'll take all the side roads, and before you know it, you're going to go off and be a cricketer or something. You'll forget. Well, you'll follow delusions instead. So you've got to remember. We've got to force our poor deluded samsaric minds into thinking differently. And slowly, as they say, as Rinpoche said, with familiarity, there's nothing that doesn't get easier. So it's hard work because we're motivated. We're just on autopilot of attachment right now. That's just how we are, you know. It's just the way we are. So don't beat yourself up for it. Just remind yourself every now and again. And then, of course, when you've got your lay vows, your refuge, your lay vows, your bodhisattva vows, your tantric vows, your commitments, when you have these and you know them well, then they will inform your life, you know. Unbelievable. So these tools are all there from the Bodhisattva path. Amazing tools that our lamas give us. We just have to use them, you know. You want a break now? Have a break. Okay. See you in a minute. Who's the machine man? Okay. So, yeah, you see. And then I get excited and it's going to be impossible because I shout very loud. So, what Buddha's saying is that's how things exist. But the trouble is we haven't got a clue. We don't know. We don't realize this. We can't see it. We're totally blind, you know. We have no idea. And this fundamental ignorance is why we suffer. This fundamental ignorance of how things actually exist is why we suffer. So this seems very abstract to us. Who would have thought that you see things wrongly is why you suffer? It's very surprising to us. It doesn't seem like how it is for us, you know. So then we think, well, there's how do things exist? Well, there's two ways of talking about it. Two ways of talking. How things exist conventionally and how things exist ultimately. So the emptiness is the shorthand for saying how things are ultimately, or it's the ultimate nature, these words. But the way to talk conventionally is what we need to think about. You know, what we need to do is think about certain things which bring the conclusion, therefore, things are empty. So it's almost like you could say, if we think of the two truths, conventional and ultimate, the ultimate is the conclusion we have to come to. It is empty of existing inherently. That's like the conclusion. That's the answer. That's the result. So how do you get it? How do you get to see that? What are the methods to get to see that? Well, the king of logic, the king of methods, as Lama Yeshe puts it, is to think about dependent arising, to think about how things exist. Huh? Or we're too distracted. I'll repeat it. This is the entire point of everything. The Buddha is saying that things exist in a certain way and that we are ignorant of it. We don't realize it. This is what he means by this ignorance, which I'll explain a bit more. So we have to sort out, we have to fix that ignorance. We have to remove it from our mind. He says we don't understand how things exist. So there are two ways he puts how things exist. There's a way of describing how things exist conventionally. All the individual phenomena of this universe. And that's the categories in the Heart Sutra. Those different categories are covering all the things in the universe. And all Buddha's saying is everything has these two ways of existing. The conventional way, which has got its own particular characteristics, and then ultimately how it is empty of existing inherently. So emptiness and dependent arising. These are the two words, the shorthand that they use for the ultimate and the conventional way that things exist. Okay, so one way to say it is like it's as if emptiness, the ultimate, is the conclusion we are trying to get to. That's the thing we're trying to see. That's the thing we're trying to get. That's the thing we're trying to understand. So how we understand it, the method we use to understand it, is to think about how things exist conventionally. The shorthand for that is dependent arising. The king of logics, Lama Yeshe puts it, to prove emptiness. So in this sense, emptiness is the conclusion to come to. Okay. So think. We're going to talk about Buddha's views of the world, Buddha's observations about how things exist. So that we can learn, if we choose to, so we can learn to make this our view, so we can become a Buddha too. And why? Because then there'll be no separation between self and other, and we'll have the perfect wisdom to help every sentient being exactly as they need for as long as time exists. And why this is because Buddha says this is our natural potential. So for this reason we sit here today, listening, thinking, analyzing, meditating. Okay.
Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar.
In dependence upon various factors. This is the way to put it. That's what we have to think about. What's that noise? I'm such a sensitive girl. You know, I can't stand bad noises. It seems like static, yeah. Anyway. What is it? Anyway, I'll keep going. It's good. Oh, it's getting louder. Oh. Oh. There we go. Okie doke. Okay, so have you got this statement I just made? Are we okay? Are we okay? Oh, it's over here. He's making the noise. Oh, he's trying to listen to the Spanish. Oh, we have to give him another machine then. Give him another machine. Somebody lend him one. No? He needs the Spanish. Well, sweetheart, you're going to have to put up with my English, are you? You don't have a problem. Oh. Oh, sweetheart, what can we do? How are you going to manage? Will you manage with... You're okay? Okay, good. All right. Okay. All right. So did you get that statement I made? Just now, the essence of it.
Beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Voy por refugio hasta alcanzar la iluminación, al Buda, al Dharma y a la Asamblea Suprema, por los méritos que acumule practicando la generosidad y demás perfecciones, que pueda obtener el estado de Buda para beneficiar a todos los seres. Esta tierra ungida con perfume y regada de flores, con el monte Meru, los 4 continentes, el sol y la luna, vista como una tierra pura de Budas, yo te ofrezco, que todos los seres puedan gozar de una tierra así. Oh sagrado y venerable Lama, desde las nubes de compasión que se forman en los cielos de tu sabiduría dharmakāyica, por favor, derrama una lluvia de Dharma vasto y profundo, de acuerdo precisamente con las necesidades de los que serán adiestrados. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kaniyatayami.
So as we've been discussing, you know, Buddha's saying that everything, the way things exist is that they don't have an inherent nature. So those words for us, this is what we have to learn to understand. And he says is this too loud? Seems very loud. Shouting, I'm shouting. I think I'm shouting. Can we turn me down low?